Welcome back to Movie Review. What you are about to see in this video is a recap of a science fiction movie, titled Passengers, released in 2016. Sit back and relax while we delve into an exciting science fiction movie. The movie begins in space with the spaceship Avalon traveling to the colony world of Homestead 2 while the inhabitants of Earth are fleeing in large numbers. The 5,000 passengers and the crew will spend the entire 120-year journey in hibernation pods. The trip has been ongoing for 30 years. Power is redirected to the forward shields while the spacecraft sails through a meteor storm. When the ship collides with a massive meteor, the power blinks, red alert screens appear in the control area, and everything soon returns to normal. Something terrible has occurred. A cheerful computer voice awakens mechanical engineer Jim Preston in his pod and informs him that they are on their way to Homestead 2. He is informed that it is typical to feel weak and confused after hibernating. The computer directs him to his cabin, where he sleeps, after scanning the wristband on his arm. The following morning, he gets out of bed, mulls over what to wear to meet other travelers, then walks into a cafeteria by himself. He attends a colonist orientation session on Homestead, but he is the only one present. The upbeat computer-generated instructor finds it difficult to comprehend his inquiry as to why no one else is there. Jim is worried, and starts searching for other passengers in the spaceship. Jim visits the main concourse but receives no assistance from the information desk. He locates a place of business from which he may communicate with the Homestead Company, but is forewarned that doing so will be costly. When he sends a message asking for assistance because he is the only one awake, he learns that it will take 15 years for anyone on Earth to receive it. He is by himself. Jim discovers all of the ship's equipment manuals. He reads through the instructions for the hibernation pods but is unable to figure out how to restart it once the person has woken up. He is unable to enter the command area or the area with the crew pods to try to wake anyone for assistance. He does not have the necessary clearance because of his wristband. Jim is totally worried about the situation. Suddenly, he sees a man standing in the bar. He is a bartender named Arthur. He is happy to see another person in the spaceship. He goes near to him and finds that it is an artificially intelligent robot. It only offers bartender advice, such as, if you don't like where you are, change things. Jim travels in general class, which has a more basic cabin and basic food facilities. He tries to enter the command area by breaking the main door, but failed. While Jim is having conversations with Arthur, he informed Jim about Modern Suit, which has nicer amenities. Jim breaks the door of the Modern Suit and enters the room. He starts using all the amenities in the suit. While Jim continues to enjoy himself on the ship for a year, he grows more and more lonely as a result of the lack of other people. He goes to a location where passengers can don spacesuits and leave the ship while still being securely tethered to it. Without a spacesuit, Jim considers opening the airlock to commit suicide but stops himself and enters the pod area instead. He stumbles near a pod that contains Aurora Lane, a stunning woman. He checks out the passenger list she had created before the ship sailed. She is a journalist who was visiting Homestead to have an adventure and discover the motivations behind colonists. He thinks she is perfect because he reads her stories. After a year alone, he struggles with whether to wake her up even though doing so will condemn her to die on the ship. However, he can no longer bear the loneliness, so he uses her pod to manually wake her up while hiding so that she cannot see him. Aurora is awakened by the same upbeat computer program and directed to her cabin where she will sleep. The following morning, Aurora awakens by herself and makes her way to the Grand Concourse, where she runs into Jim. He is honest with her about how long he has been awake, but he is silent about waking her up. The android bartender Arthur has agreed to his request not to tell Aurora what he has done. Every day, Aurora and Jim talk about possible ways to fix the pods. While writing her story, Aurora runs and swims. She asks Jim why he left Earth, and he replies that he likes to make and fix things, whereas on Earth, when something breaks and isn't fixed, it gets replaced. He desires to live in a home that he constructs himself. She intended to travel to the colony, spend a year there interviewing colonists about their motivations for leaving Earth, and then return to the planet. His standard clearance does not allow him to receive the elaborate breakfasts that Aurora, a gold-class passenger, can order for him. After some time of getting to know one another, Aurora agrees to Jim's invitation to go on a date. After their meal, he leads her into the room with the spacesuits, where there are 2 suits. They both put on their suits and leave the room. Aurora is happy to return inside, and they enter Jim's cabin to share a passionate embrace. They enjoy their routine of exercise, stargazing, and using the dining and entertainment options provided by the ship. When Aurora's birthday comes around again, Jim has a special surprise planned for her, a ring he made himself. Jim agrees when Aurora tells him they have no secrets as they enter the bar. Jim is unaware that Arthur will take this to mean that Jim has admitted to waking Aurora up. Arthur tells Aurora what a wise decision it was for Jim to choose her as the person to wake her up as Jim enters the men's room. Jim is told to stay away from Aurora because she is devastated and enraged. She breaks into his cabin one night while he is sleeping and beats him with her fists. Jim tries to use a ship's intercom to explain himself while Aurora is running, but she screams that he killed her. While all of this is going on, the control room is gradually receiving more and more alerts about system failures. Jim and Aurora have picked up on minor issues, such as the cleaning robots' malfunctioning systems. Gus Mancuso, a deck crew chief who has woken up early, shows up on the concourse one day. He explains that something very serious is wrong because hibernation pods have never failed before. They enter the command center using his wristband and discover that the ship's automatic diagnostics have failed, necessitating a manual inspection of each deck. Aurora nearly drowns in the swimming pool due to a significant gravity failure while Gus conducts tests before this can be completed. Gus discovers a pattern of cascading failures, and the computer generates a timeline indicating the first failure occurred 2 years prior. Gus concludes that power diversions were used during the initial failures to try and rebalance the load, but as the load increased, more and more failures occurred. The crew and all of the passengers could be lost in space if the ship itself perishes. It will require a manual inspection to determine which part of the main engine area was initially impacted. Gus passes out at this point, and Jim and Aurora take him to the hospital where they use a medical auto-diagnostic scanner. His body is covered in multiple necrosis, and the malfunctioning hibernation pod is about to kill him. He dons his uniform and gets ready to pass away while also giving Jim and Aurora his wristband so they can enter the areas of the ship where they need to go in order to make repairs. Jim and Aurora discover a meteorite-caused hole in engineering that passes through several important regions. A hole in the hull nearly suckers Aurora out when they open one of the doors. Jim pushes a tablet to her, and she blocks the hole with it. Jim then further seals the hole with a liquid sealant. They discover that the fusion engine exhaust needs to be manually vented after the area becomes pressurized. Jim needs to put on a spacesuit and head outside to fix the manual override because it isn't working. In the end, he has to enter the exhaust passage to open a flap, which Jim has to hold open in order for the manual vent to operate. Aurora debates with Jim on the radio now, desperate not to lose him, but she presses the button. Jim gets shoved out, his suit has a hole in it, and his tether breaks. He bids Aurora farewell. Running to put on a spacesuit of her own, she sets out to find him. Jim is unresponsive when they get inside, but she manages to get him back by grabbing his tether. Jim is declared dead by the autodock after she drags him to the hospital. Jim is successfully revived by Aurora using Gus's wristband and his override code to activate the machine. She is relieved and ecstatic to learn that he is alive. Later, everything on the ship has returned to normal. Jim is working on the autodock and informs Aurora that he discovered a way to rehibernate her in the hospital using the command override, but he would be back on his own. When Aurora realized she would never see Jim again, she made the decision to spend the night together and start a new life for the two of them on the ship. She accepts when he gives her the improvised engagement ring he made earlier. After 88 years. When the captain and crew awaken at the Grand Concourse at the end of the voyage, they discover a massive tree, an abundance of trailing vines and vegetation, birds flying, and a cabin, possibly containing Jim and Aurora's grandchildren. In her voiceover, Aurora tells the passengers how she made a happy life for herself where she was. Thanks for watching. Like and comment. Subscribe.